Hi, Rebecca Stevens from Workbrighter here. I want to tell you a few stories this week about people I've met. Neil the rule breaker, John the introvert, and Diane the open-hearted is probably how you describe her. I spend a lot of my time looking at personality profiles and helping people understand themselves through the use of personality psychometrics. And what I find really interesting is, while sometimes you can really strongly predict how a trait will impact someone's behaviour at work, what you can find is that it can have another side to that trait as well. So, for example, Neil, the rule breaker. So when I was talking to Neil, we were looking at his profile, and it was really interesting to see that he was quite low on rule following. Most of the time, when people are low on rule following, I would often open with a question around, so how many speeding tickets have you got then? And it's quite it lightens the mood, and it's usually quite predictive. What you might say then, he was a very senior manager. You might say, oh, why would you want that person in a senior manager role? But it was really interesting because he was a really successful leader, because basically he was a change agent, because he wasn't afraid to challenge what went on, what the status quo was, to push boundaries, to try and do things differently. He really drove change in the organisation, and he was very aware that that was his style. And that was absolutely key. He was a very people-oriented person and made sure he brought people along for the ride, and he got their buy-in. He involved people very heavily. So this quality of rule following, whilst yes, okay, he broke rules, but actually he was just in such an ideal managerial position with that quality. And then John, the introvert manager who'd rather be in his shed than talking to his team. It's interesting. He was a really, really good manager. What emerged was that whilst he's so aware that he likes his own space and he's much more likely to be naturally quiet, that he puts in place a lot of structure to make sure he engages with his team. He doesn't make assumptions that his team are happy. He has one-to-ones. He had weekly meetings. He was incredibly structured in his approach, and in that way was very successful. And then Diane, the warm, lovely Diane, she was really, her heart was on her sleeve. You knew what was going on for her. And she was struggling a little bit because she said she trusted people naturally. I didn't want to crush that because that's such a lovely quality in a manager. And so we talked more about her awareness of people around her and her awareness of her behaviour, and just started to introduce her to things like making sure she set deadlines and making sure she agreed expectations. So just wanted to share with you some stories from interesting people I've met recently, and you can find out more at workbrighter.co.uk/secrets. Thank you.